Southwire's SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit is a new approach to a proven product. Unlike other cable-in-conduit products, SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit components are manufactured and assembled simultaneously, protecting the cable from damage. Southwire stocks more than 200 different constructions of SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit, so customers can order what they need when they need it, and can order as little as one reel or as many truckloads as needed. SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit ships directly from distribution centers across the country. The HDPE conduit comes in a variety of wall thicknesses, colors, and diameters, and almost any Southwire conductor can be installed as part of SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit. When installing SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit, all installers should be familiar with the product and procedures necessary to complete the day's job and abide by all federal, state, and local safety codes and requirements. Proper PPE, including safety vests, gloves, hard hats, and safety glasses, should be worn at all times when installing SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit. When transporting and handling SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit, it is important to follow all proper material handling procedures. Reels of SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit are always shipped in a vertical orientation and should not be transported or stored in a horizontal or laid-down orientation. When lifting and transporting reels of SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit by forklift, the flanges must be used for support. The operator should not pick the reel up by the forklift with the forks on the conduit. Reels may also be lifted by a boom and winch assembly secured to a bar or other device through the arbor holes on both of the reel flanges. In this method, proper spacing of the attached cables should be maintained above the reel flange to prevent the collapse of the flange when lifting. Reels should be fully inspected prior to unloading or loading to ensure that there is no damage to the conduit and cable assembly. In an open trench construction, the preferred method is to feed the conduit from below the reel drum into the trench. When feeding SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit into a boring application, it is easier to feed the conduit from over the top of the drum into a guide. These recommendations make handling of SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit easier and minimize potential kinking issues for the assembly. When preparing to install SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit, the payoff device should be positioned so that you can feed the conduit directly toward the center line of the placement site. In preparation to install SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit, the installer must first disconnect the cable at both ends. On one of the reel flanges of your SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit product, there is a placard that warns the installer that there is a difference in the duct and cable length. This length difference develops as you unroll the conduit off the reel and results in the conduit becoming longer than the cable inside. The allowance for the cable-to-duct difference should be no more than 1.5% of the conduit length unrolled. Because of the length difference between the conduit and the cable inside, it is very important to first cut the duct free of the reel flange, remove the end cap, and cut the restraint attaching the cable to the conduit. Once the cable has been freed from the conduit, replace the end cap and seal it with tape. Once the end cap is replaced, SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit is ready for installation. Attachment to SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit using a pulling head allows full utilization of the working strength of the duct size. The pulling force that can be safely applied during installation of SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit is a function of the conduit diameter and the wall thickness. The primary method for attaching to SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit is by the use of a basket-type pulling head. Due to the hardness and slickness of the surface, it is recommended that the installer apply several compressible bands of tape to the SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit before installing the pulling head. The first band of tape should be applied approximately 6 inches from the end of the conduit, and additional bands should be applied every 6 inches until there are bands of tape over the length of the conduit that will be covered by the pulling head. Before the pulling head is installed, the end cap must be installed over the conduit. Slip the pulling head over the end of the capped conduit, tape the bands, and pull the grip down tightly. Then, apply tape from the surface of the duct up onto the end of the pulling head about 2 inches. The operator should not extend the tape on the pulling head more than 2 inches. Doing so can restrict the pulling head's compressive potential and can greatly limit the allowable pulling tensions on the cable. Once the cable has been prepped, there are several applications by which the contractor can install SIMpull Cable-in-Conduit. Typical installations usually follow trenching or directional boring applications. For open trench applications, the trench should be constructed under the consideration that every deviation in elevation or direction will have a negative impact on cable replacement tension. The number of 90-degree angles in the trench should be limited to 4. Proper trench preparation can help assure the least resistance to cable pulling. When installing SIMpull cable-in-conduit into a trench, first, unreel the conduit from the payoff device. During the payout of the duct from the reel, the installer should avoid overspinning of the reel. This can be achieved by assigning an additional man as a reel tender. Pulling the conduit off the reel under slight tension allows for a straighter installation. At the end of the trench, SIMpull cable-in-conduit can easily form a bend required to sweep up into pedestals or transformer pads. Do this by rolling in a bend. Form a sweep by bending the conduit back over itself, forming a horizontal U-shape beyond the desired angle. Be careful not to bend the product less than the minimum bending radius for the conduit. Then, return to the vertical position in the desired location. Backfill under the bend to support the conduit. When the conduit is cut at the end of a run, it is imperative that the cut end be sealed with an end cap immediately. As you have selected SIMpull cable-in-conduit to provide a safe environment for your cable, it is important to protect the integrity of your duct system by keeping it capped during and after installation. SIMpull cable-in-conduit can also be installed through directional boring. Directional boring is a trenchless method of installing cable using a surface-launched drilling rig. Directional boring is used when trenching or excavating is not practical and can provide less traffic disruption, lower cost, deeper and/or longer installation, no access pit, shorter completion times, directional capabilities, and environmental safety. To install SIMpull cable-in-conduit through directional boring, cut the restraining cord at the payoff prior to installation. Failure to follow this step could result in damage to the SIMpull cable-in-conduit product. It is important to use a back reamer that is at least 1.5 times larger than the outer diameter of the product being installed. Using a back reamer smaller than the recommended size can result in water pressure buildup and extra work required to relieve the pressure. From this point, the installer should guide the cable into the pathway. Again, when the conduit is cut at the end of a run, it is imperative that the cut end be sealed with an end cap immediately. We recently simulated a job site comparison of SIMpull cable-in-conduit against two traditional methods of direct burial installation. SIMpull cable-in-conduit was tested in a controlled environment alongside a typical PVC installation and an installation using empty duct. The trench constructed for the comparison was a 150-foot long trench with one sharp 90-degree bend. As you can see, installing a direct buried cable using PVC as the routing agent takes significantly more time to complete. 3 men were required for this process. The PVC was first glued together at the joints and laid into the trench. Then, the wire was pulled through the PVC to the junction box. In this particular instance, the pull string snagged a joint in the PVC, which required an additional 10 minutes to relieve the issue. In our second installation, we tested the use of empty duct in direct burial installation. 3 men were also required to complete this installation. The duct was first laid into the trench, and then the wires were set up and pulled into the duct. While the time it took to perform this installation was significantly shorter than the PVC installation, the contractor required more handling, more tools, more manpower, and more time than when installing SIMpull cable-in-conduit. When installing Southwire SIMpull cable-in-conduit, wire can be placed in a trench in as little as one simple step. There is no need for additional reels of wire, and in most cases, 2 men can get the job done efficiently. Southwire's SIMpull cable-in-conduit routes smoothly through sharp bends and can allow for a quick installation, helping save time and money for the contractor. The total time required for the SIMpull cable-in-conduit installation was 6 minutes and 45 seconds, compared to an installation time of 41 minutes for the PVC installation and 16 minutes and 11 seconds for the empty duct installation. And only 2 men were required to complete the SIMpull cable-in-conduit installation process, helping save more manpower and more money for the contractor. Southwire, we deliver power responsibly.